My name is Alec Tatum. I'm an undergraduate student here at Florida State University, pursuing a bachelor's degree in the College of Business with majors in finance and real estate. I serve as the FSU Real Estate Society Vice President. It is my honor to welcome you to the If I Were 21 series organized by the FSU Real Estate Center. This series invites leading executives from industry segments across the nation to discuss their work, career paths, and market conditions, as well as offer advice to students getting ready to enter the profession. Time has been set aside during today's discussion to respond to your questions. So if you have a question, please send it to us at any time during the discussion by using the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll monitor this and try to address your questions. Before I introduce today's guests, I'd like to welcome all of those who are able to join us from other universities across the nation. It is our pleasure to have you with us. Today's discussion features a one-on-one conversation with Jodie McLean, the CEO of Edens in Washington, D.C. With a portfolio of 125 properties, Edens is one of the nation's leading private owners, operators, and developers of retail real estate. Ms. McLean is an industry titan. During her 25-year tenure at Edens, she has been responsible for the acquisition, development, redevelopment, and disposition of more than $15 billion in retail assets. We are absolutely honored that she'd be able to take time out of her busy schedule to join us today. Leading today's discussion, we are fortunate enough to have Mr. John Crossman. Mr. Crossman, the founder and owner of Crossman Career Builders, is a nationally recognized executive, writer and speaker, and a passionate advocate for the minority cause, student success. Among his many business and community activities, Mr. Crossman formerly served as the CEO of Crossman and Company, a leading real estate company in Orlando, Florida. Please welcome Mr. John Crossman.
Thank you, Alec. So good to be here with you. And Jodie, I'm so honored to be here with you. So cool. I have been a fan of yours for a long time. And I will tell you that beyond that, and preparing for this, I've been researching you. I've been stalking you. That's what the kids say, Jodie. I've been stalking you. And as I've been researching you, I'm even more blown away about who you are and all the things you're doing. So welcome and thank you for being a part of this.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Alec, for having me.
So Jodie, I was watching the debate last night, and I should back up and say this. Both of my parents, as I was growing up, described themselves, among the many things they did in civil rights, they described themselves both feminists. They were always working for women's causes. And so I have two older sisters, and my mom is still poking me on topics on occasion, and I've got two teenage daughters and a great wife. So my worldview is that this very strong imagery of women. So when I was watching the debate last night and then the follow-up, you know, it throws me a little times when they start having conversations about the dynamic of having a woman as vice president. And so as I was dealing with that, and I had been researching you, I read the article where you did the interview with Forbes about being a woman in business and leadership, and how it looks like globally women leaders have done a better job with COVID. And so, you know, I've sort of been like, man, if Jodie's in charge, I'm in. She's an awesome leader. But I really want to start off with that specific topic of women in leadership. And you've talked about what traits women in CEO positions bring. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I thought you were going to ask me what it's like to be a woman CEO, which is a terrible question because I have no idea what it's like not to be a woman CEO.
About traits, yeah.
I don't know if these are traits that are uniquely feminine. And I said this in this article as well. I know a lot of men who lead the same way, but I think that it is natural to lead with empathy. It is natural to lead with humility as a female. I think that makes us very open to understanding those around us and meeting the needs. And during COVID, for us, first and foremost, it started with our employees and our employees' families. And until we could have our employees feel safe and them feel safe about their families, it was going to be hard to quickly pivot then to making our retail partners. We have 2,600 retail partners in 9 major markets across the country. And it was important for us to make them and the communities we serve. We serve about 15 million people every day at our places. And how do we make sure that those people feel safe? So I think that's where we start. I also think, again, I don't know if this is feminine, but very decisive in these moments. In these moments where we had moved our company to being very decentralized and pushing decisions out to being made in the marketplace, that is how the very best retail decisions get made, by the people closest to the community, closest to the real estate. We had to radically pivot and bring in very centralized decision making, very decisive decision making. And what I learned in hindsight, being a little bit nervous to just put down this authoritarian rule, was without fail, every single one of our regional heads, our country, our portfolio is divided into 5 regions, said, thank you. Thank you for, number one, making what were really hard decisions. Thank you for making them for us. Everybody fell in line together as one singular team. We tried to take the distraction of safety for our employees straight off the table so they could focus. And so I think those are things that put us in a unique position. I'm a real estate developer. I've taken risks all my life. It's what I do. But I only take those risks where I can sort of quantify the downside. So there are times where I'm always about mitigating risk. And so I also think during this COVID time, it was really easy for us to prioritize and really focus on what were the biggest risks. Let's address those, give our teams priorities. And it gave them clarity instead of showing up every day and saying, oh my God, what do I do today? There was real true clarity. We were able to move together and are continuing to move together. I think we're a long way from this being complete, but together as one unified team.
Well, you know, Jodie, it's interesting that when I look at you and I hear that, what it reflects on to me is that your leadership is a combination of professionalism, maturity, and humanity. I think a lot of different, particularly developed leaders, can be led via ego, or some people lead with a kind of, why don't you just rub some dirt on it kind of mentality. And when you're dealing with retail, as you say, you're touching people. When we talk to students at FSU and other universities, so many times when we ask students what they want to be when they have a career in real estate, they want to be a CEO of a development company, right? It comes up a lot. And because their perception is that's the top of the food chain, and they're probably right. But one of the things I always point out to them is that developers tend to be the wealthiest people in history. They're also the most likely to go to prison, declare bankruptcy, or commit suicide. And I mean, so when I hear you, it's like, you know, I think that when you describe your leadership, it's a very balanced. You're able to take risk, but you also you're well insulated and stronger because of of all the things we talked about. From your traits of leadership, I think are really strong.
Well, I would also just add to that, at Edens, we really do believe we're in the business of humanity. We think that our work is much bigger than real estate. We really came about this in 2006 when it was interesting. I had a really high-flying career. I had a lot of support. We're a private company. I think Alex said this earlier, we have about 125 places, and we've really grown this very dynamic portfolio. And we're very transactional. To your point, we were really transactional in the work we were doing. And in 2006, a lot of crossroads came together all at the same time for me personally. I had a 10-year-old adorable little boy at home. I was a mother. I loved that role. I was on the road 5 days a week, barely getting home when I would. I was doing totally focused on my work at home. absorbed there. And all of a sudden one day in '06, and we were getting ready, we had been flying literally all over the world, more than just the country, and looking at these town centers that were going up everywhere. And in '06, I don't know if people on the phone on this call remember it, but in '06, there was so much capital flying into real estate, coming into real estate. There was so much capital in the public markets, especially into retail. And all of this, so this was this go-go time, and I was going all over, and I was looking at these major town centers, and there was something about them that was so sterile to me as a human being. They all looked the same. They were all the same boxes, no matter where I went. I could be in Florida, I could be in California, New York. I was everywhere I was going. Heavily influenced at the time, though, also by what was the European approach. And then I'd come home at night to this little guy, and all of a sudden one day something wonderful happened in my life. And after I got him in bed, I went to the computer to dial up, right? You log in, it took about 5 minutes to log in. And I ordered the shirt, a white shirt that I needed. And it was going to arrive at my house magically in about 10 days. 2 weeks maybe. And it was a life-altering moment for me. And in that moment in time, I knew there was this absolute change in me personally about what was happening at work. It felt all transactional, and where was the soulfulness about where I was spending all my time. I was not as present as I wanted to be at home. And I just sat down and I said, things are going to radically change. The one thing that hasn't changed over my career is 80% of all retail decisions are made by women. And I was that consumer. And I was working harder than ever. 72% of moms are working out of the household. All of these things were coming together at the same time. We were offered this efficiency of what was then dollar. And so we sat down and we re-looked at our entire business, everything about it. And that is the point in time where we really moved into being a purpose-driven company. And at that point in time, we knew retail was going to radically change. And we either, if we were going to be just solely transactional, then, and there was no humanity, there was no point in bringing people together. So that point in time, we deep soul searched. We redid our whole business plan. We did not know what was around the corner in '08, but we changed our purpose to enrich community. And so today, our sole purpose in enriching communities is to bring people together routinely, 3.5 trips per week, 5 hours of dwell time, because when people come together that way, they feel a part of something much bigger than themselves. They start to feel a part of community, and that's where real measurable prosperity happens. It happens economically, soulfully, socially, and culturally. And having this experience of COVID and staying at home, I feel more empowered for that purpose and mission than ever.
Awesome. That's awesome. You said a lot of rich things there, Jodie. That was a lot. That was a lot of great stuff. So one of the things I heard you talk about was healthy balance in life. And so some people might be thinking, gosh, can I be a powerful CEO and also have a healthy marriage and healthy kids? And it sounds like you can. You just got to be intentional. I also like the fact you've used the word radical more than any other word I've heard you use, which but that's a good word. You have to push in hard. I think that's awesome. And then some people might think, man, I really want to make an impact in community, but being a CEO is being a business person that's more about money than people. And it sounds like you've really intentionally gotten into all those different places, which is really admiring. I want to go into this next area because you did something that I just admire so much, and that was so brave, was you wrote this article on LinkedIn about communities. And within that, you really touched on the mental health space. And I just think that was so powerful, and how you talk about how it is so dangerous for people to be alone. Like people who they isolate what they're feeling, they isolate completely away from their humans. And so your projects are very much arguably a part of being mentally healthy. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's no problem. When I think about our business, the, the real problem we're trying to solve is isolation, loneliness, and depression. And when we think about that, that is the reason for community to exist, and we all need it. I can go as deep as you want into the chemical and the physiological makeup of us as human beings and why we need this. And COVID has done nothing more than shine a really bright light on this issue. So lack of routine social interaction with other people. So not digitally, but in the human analog format. Lack of that routine social interaction is more dangerous to our health. And this comes from scientific journals. This isn't something that I just made up. This comes, it was first done out of BYU in 2010. The first study came out and it's been updated routinely, but it's more dangerous to our health than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, alcoholism, or obesity. As human beings, we are designed to need this social interaction with other people. And so as other institutions have sort of waned in their importance in our day-to-day lives, it makes it makes the amenities of our life, which is what we feel we're providing to people, is the amenity to their life, their place where they can come together routinely. Remember, most people won't travel more than 17 minutes from their house. Most disposable income is really spent, 80% of disposable income is spent within 20 minutes from people's households. But if we can bring them together routinely, so this is how we think about design of our places, this is how we think about curation. If we can inspire you to come 3.5 trips per week, this is a huge number, 5 hours of dwell time, you slowly start to recognize the people around you. You feel emotionally safe. It was a lot about convenience. It was really about emotional attachment. It's also about health now coming out of COVID. People want to be around the same people routinely. And you start to connect. And then if we can offer you things, sometimes in our curation, a lot of people's social lives now are happening in the aisles of Publix. They're connecting with their neighbors, they're connecting with their friends there, but they're also happening at their fitness, they're happening at the coffee shop. So that's where people are making these connections. And we're trying to go a step further. We're doing a lot with art, we're doing a lot with gratitude boxes, things that will engage conversation at our places. We put what we call the jewelry of our places are really benches, small, intimate plazas where people, and designed in a way where when I bump into you, John, I want to slow down. I want to take an extra sip of my coffee with you, hear about your kids, hear about what's going on, because that little bit of connection sends me back into the world with a little bit more confidence, a little bit more joy. And the business side to this is for every 1% of additional time you spend at our places, you also spend 1.3% additional wallet share. So I think Walt Disney figured this out long ago, but when people feel good, when people feel connected, they're a little bit more generous with their pocketbook.
That's great stuff, Jodie. So it sounds like you and your own life made this move from transaction to relational, and then you've really done it corporately, and you're doing it now property-wise. And it also sounds like from if somebody has a perspective of faith or a perspective of capitalism or a perspective of psychology or sociology, all those things all kind of line up to exactly what you're talking about. All true.
Well, we all studied this in school, Maslow's pyramid. You are never going to be a self-actualized person unless you can bring your whole self. You have to feel safe, your emotional needs, but until you can bring your whole self. I think about that as Edens, as an organization. We're never going to reach our own potential as an organization unless our people can bring their whole selves to the workplace and really feel confident, feel like they're in a trusted environment.
Yeah.
I think this is really important. And when we think about take that further, keep taking that ripple effect out, that's what we want to inspire as well in our communities. And I wish we touched more people, but I think if we can touch 15 million people routinely every week and give them a place where they feel emotionally safe to make these connections, hopefully there's this continued ripple effect amongst that.
Well, I feel better already. So that you're doing it. That's one. Jodie, I want to move over to. I've got just a couple of questions that more relate directly to students. And students, I'm going to do these questions, and then we're going to go over to Alec. And so be ready to send in your hard questions for Jodie. Jodie, you and I, we were talking about this the other day, but again, back to the debate last night, Bob Woodward's name got dropped in it, and I immediately thought of you because you and I were with him together. And when I was reflecting on that, I was reminded of the song from Hamilton. Did you see Hamilton, Jodie? You've seen it?
I did.
Yeah, I got teenage kids, we've seen it 87 times. But that song there goes, "The Room Where It Happened," right? And so you as a CEO and as a leader, you're often in the room where it happens, right? And that's pretty interesting and powerful. When you're a college student, you don't even understand those levels of power and influence. And so when somebody's young and they're 21, they're thinking, man, how do I end up being in the room where it happens? Can you give just like a little bit of insight? How does somebody matriculate up through and to be in these sort of power positions that you're in?
Yeah, that is a great question. I'll tell you, my teenagers went kicking and screaming to Hamilton in New York. We saw it when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
I gained a lot of big points after it was over. After it was over, I told them, but this is what I would say. And I think about my own career, and I'm thinking forward, and I'm watching now my kids in the workforce and young people who are joining Edens. I think work ethic is extremely important. For me, I sat back and I was trying to take in the landscape, and I quickly realized that the gentleman who founded our company, Joe Edens, was an early riser. He went into work every day at about 5 or 5:30 in the morning. And I made a point of being in there at 5:30 in the morning and meeting him at the coffee pot because nobody else was there. And he was really curious, like, what are you doing here? And I'd tell him whatever I was working on, and he loved the work ethic of me being there, but it always led to us having conversations. And I would ask him about, Mr. Edens, I'm reading this lease and I don't know what subrogation is or whatever. And he loved the moment to be able to mentor me. And so I think for me, there was nothing that was either too early, there was nothing that was too late. I spent the first part of my career working as hard as I could, and there was nothing that I said no to. I was willing to accept any challenge that was put in front of me. And I would say this especially to the women who are on this call with us. Even if you're not prepared, say yes. Say yes. Take on the challenge. It can be nerve-wracking. Don't let them. They don't have to see you sweat, but don't back down from the challenge, and don't be afraid to fail. That's another thing that. And again, I watch it with a lot when I was younger with a lot of my female peers more than anything. And I played a lot of sports growing up, especially tennis. For any tennis fans out there, there's great matches going on in Paris right now. But when you play tennis, you almost always lose a point on the way to winning a game. You almost always lose a game on the way to winning a set. And sometimes you lose a set on the way to winning a match. And I think that always taught me it's okay to fail, focus, and get over it quickly and get back in there. So take the risk. another thing I would say is be curious. And you hear people say this to students all the time, oh, we need to be lifelong learners. We really need to be lifelong learners because what is happening in this world, and I'm in brick and mortar retail, and it is moving so fast. You think I am in the most non-progressive industry that could possibly be? Not true. I am in one of the most intensive, fast-moving industries because of what technology is doing. And people talk about e-commerce. The store is in the middle of 80% of e-commerce transactions, even those that are happening on Amazon. So as crazy as that might be, I would say be curious every day. And those are the things that I think if you come in, and just one last thing, because I feel like I tease this out of every young person who sits in a meeting with me. They sit in and they're very respectful, which I appreciate, but I want to hear their voice. I always want to hear their voice. And so if they're not comfortable speaking up, I'm going to call on them before they leave. And I'm going to say, John, you sat in here. I'd love to hear your perspective on this discussion. And you're being called on because you're probably bringing diversity in that room, diversity of experience, diversity of thought, and have the confidence to say what you think might be dumb, might be nobody else thought this way, maybe I'm the only person. Use that voice because I want to always hear what is somebody whose life experience and just their pure age, her life experience is so radically different than mine. I always want to hear that person's perspective.
Jodie, that's so great. It's funny because when you said, you'd ask me a question, I got kind of nervous, like right when as you said that. But if you did that to me, and I would be nervous, and I would probably say something kind of dumb, and I'd fumble, and that would be painful. But then what you'd say to me is like, John, come back the next time, and come back the next time, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a big part. It's funny, and I really want the students to hear this. All those things you said is why you're in the top 1%. Like, why does somebody get there? So when you talked about Mr. Edens being there at 5 a.m., no one told you to show up at 5:01 or whatever you did. You just did, but then that created this relationship. And it's so funny, Jodie, because I've never had this conversation. That was exactly my experience with Henry Faison. I mean, the exact same thing. And that's why I have that relationship there. So that's where you go. And we're going to go to students now with their questions. Before I do, Jodie, this big tennis star, Coco? You've heard of Coco?
Of course.
Okay. Did you know that her mother was a track star at Florida State University? Did you know that?
Kidding. I had no idea.
She was a heptathlete. So she comes from good Florida State athletics.
I think I did know her mom was a track star, though. Well,
yes.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, Alec, enough about FSU track. I know we could talk about that for days, but let's go over to you. And you got some good questions from some smart students. Go ahead, Alec. Uh-oh, I think maybe Alex froze up there a little bit.
Yeah, so first question is from Tannen. Everybody hear me?
Yeah, keep going.
So first question from Tannen. Do you have any advice for a student starting out with a job and a GSE?
GSE, advice for jobs starting in GSE.
I would say my advice would be much like what I just gave, which is be curious. Don't back down from asking questions. Be open to learning from those around you. Know that you have a ton to learn from those who have the wisdom around you, but on the other hand, be empowered to share your own ideas, your own thoughts, and don't be afraid of hard work. I think of those kids who are around us, and we don't believe in FaceTime. It's not about FaceTime, but you really notice the people who put in the extra effort in everything they're doing, and they stand out. Sometimes they're not the smartest kids. Sometimes they don't have the best resumes. Those are the young people who always move the fastest in any industry, in any place. So Work ethic is important. Curiosity, I can't stress that enough. Intellectual curiosity, and ability to have the confidence to share your thoughts and ideas.
You know,
Awesome. Thank you.
Jody, real quick, it's funny is that I tell my daughters all the time, like when I take them on vacation, I give them a first class vacation. I give them all of me. When they're doing the dishes, I expect first class dishes, right? Like, but I'm just trying to get their brains, like if you receive and then give, and I kind of I hear that in you that like, hey, if your students are thinking about something, like really get into it. Alec, we got a really great question here as well for Jody. Go ahead.
Mhm. So this question comes from Ian. Do you believe mentorships/apprenticeships still play a large role in contemporary times? What are the best ways to go about developing that sort of relationship with an established profession?
I am a huge believer in mentorships. Mentorship over time will lead to sponsorship. I see these two things as being really different. But I have had multiple, I've been so fortunate to have multiple mentors over my life. I still have mentors. I will say that you've heard me refer to Mr. Edens. He was probably my first mentor. And when you're young and you're just entering the workforce, what you need from a mentor is going to be different than what you need 5 years in, 10 years in, 15 years in. And it's okay to have mentors that, you know, no mentor has ever moved out of my life, but I've always collected more mentors along the way, and I've just needed more. But I think somebody who can give you guidance. When you're younger, you need somebody who can just show you the ropes, talk to you about things maybe you're not thinking about, because you only know what you know. And there's so much that just comes from experience. And so I think you need that. As you get older, you're going to need sponsors. And sponsors are somebody who's willing to really put their own reputation on the line for you and really open doors for those next experiences. I sit on 2 corporate boards right now. I wouldn't be in either one if somebody on that board didn't absolutely put their own reputation on the line for me and say, vouch for me. Lots of opportunities have come my way, but I believe in them. As I get older, I believe in them more and more, and the power of the networks that come with mentorship and sponsorship are incredible. So, I think they're a two-way street. That's the other thing I would say. I think you get out of a mentor-mentee relationship exactly what you put into it. And I feel the same way now in my life as I've transitioned to being a mentor. I get so much out of the mentees in my life. It's incredible. It's where real joy comes from for me.
Alec, real quick, with what Jody said, one of the things that's weaved within all that is that she's not talking about having mentor charity relationships. She's talking about having mentor relationships, meaning as people mentor Jody across her career, she didn't just take and never give anything back. As people gave her time and wisdom, she gave them other things back, right? And so like if any of you were like getting mentored by Jody, you'd best be the best, biggest Edens fans on the planet and commenting on social media and all that kind of stuff. So when you think about in a mentor relationship, it's a relationship, not a charity in a one-sided way. Alec, we have no more questions. Keep going, buddy.
Yes, we do. So this next one is, given the variation in how the pandemic has affected different retail tenants, grocery versus restaurant, do you see a long-lasting shift in the tenant mix or a slow return to what was normal?
That is a great question. No question. COVID, the one thing that I learned, but I needed time to have perspective on COVID, is that we were ready for this. And yes, we're going to see a shift in curation. We're going to see a retail rationalization like no other time before. Today we have about 23.5 square feet per capita. I think we're going to wind up at about 18. which means that there's going to be somewhere between 1.5 billion and 2 billion square feet of retail that's repositioned away from its current use. I think you're going to see a lot of that happen in the apparel industry. There will be other, I think that's one industry that I worry about. I worry about the theater industry. I am temporarily very concerned, obviously, about the restaurant industry, but I think as you build your bridge, we think the recovery for groups that look like us, we're all open air. We don't have any enclosed malls, is probably late 22, early 23 is when the recovery happens. So I think industries like restaurants are going to be really impaired during that time. But as I look long term, restaurants will look different, but there's a vital part of our community and our community fabric of our communities. So yes, I think there's going to be this radical shift. We see 77% of all Americans saying that health and wellness is one of their biggest priorities. A huge trend also with boomers and what's coming out of it. It's always been a huge trend with millennials and the Gen Zs. John, I think you're a Gen Xer. Nobody talks about us. We don't really matter, but I think it's pretty important to us too.
We're cool, Jodie. We are cool, is what it is.
We are the coolest. So that's what is happening right now. But I think you're also going to see health and wellness. We're going to see so much trending there. So we're also going to see this different shift in curation. And people want those experiences with other people. So yes, yes, we see systemic changes, and we do see some that are, as I say, changes on the bridge to this recovery as well.
Awesome, awesome. So our next question is, so you advocate for retail to be connected to the community rather than just a shopping experience. So with the current environment in retail, what are some innovative things that you have implemented at Eden's to make people feel safe?
It's a great question. First of all, we've turned almost everything inside out. So I don't really know how innovative that is, but we have looked at bringing as much about what's inside outside. We've converted rooftops into parks. We've converted our sides of our buildings into galleries where people can, with local artists, where people can take their own tours to be there. So we've tried to bring everything that was inside outside. We've looked at every one of our site plans and redesigned our site plans so that things like BOPUS, buy online, pick up in store, which is actually where almost over 50% of e-commerce has really grown. The cost of delivery, that cost of last mile is so significant for most retailers that they have to use things like BOPUS. So how do we have our places that feel great, that you want to go to, you want to spend time, but the logistics are really convenient at the same time? So how do we make that delivery, that pickup, make you feel great when that's how you're using your place, and at the same time, how do we make it feel like a place to really slow down? So all of that is coming together, and we're doing a lot more community. We're doing drive-in movies at several of our places where people can come together. You know, we have hand washing stations everywhere. I mean, there's a lot that has happened, some more innovative than others. And now, as we look forward, the thing I worry about the most is it's going to be so expensive for retailers to be able to drive what the consumer wants, which is seamless technology and seamless great experience in their stores. So we're thinking a lot about what is the role of the landlord going forward, and what does that mean in this new environment. So I think that you're going to see landlords take on, we used to be just real transactional. Life was easy, John, when we could sign a lease, turn over the keys, and we were done. But I think our role with retailers is going to start at design, permitting, but it's going to talk about technology platforms that we can offer small retailers that can't afford it otherwise. how do we have these technology platforms that we license? There's going to be some major changes to how we do business going forward.
I really enjoy how, when I listen to you,
Awesome.
Jodie.
And then our next question is,
I'm sorry, Alec, what was it? Jodie, I love your connectivity of feelings and ROI, right? Like, you know, you're not just saying, hey, we're doing an art gallery, and I'm sure there's no budget or whatever. There's some connectivity between those two things together. And that's an important thing for people to take away from them. So it's great. So this is awesome. Alec, go ahead. I'm sorry, buddy.
no problem, no problem. And then our next student asked, Cece, Jodie, I understand that it is ideal to always say yes to an opportunity, but if you're really not ready to take on the challenge, in my case, I come from low income, third world country. I was given an amazing opportunity to be in a room with powerful individuals, but I was not ready and I failed big time. What do you do when you're in a situation where you think you cannot recover from? And are people forgiving in the professional world?
Yes, I think people are forgiving in the professional world. I think this is a great and vulnerable question. So first I would just say thank you for this question. I think you take on the opportunity, you have to prepare yourself, and then you have to be open to learning from it. I think I've learned much more from my failures than I have from my successes. And so I wouldn't back away because you deemed that you failed. I would, though, be curious. I would spend time with somebody who is in that room who can give you honest, critical feedback that can help you improve. I would maybe even ask somebody in that room if they're willing to help and coach you. Where the place is, why was it such a colossal failure? And don't just walk away thinking, oh, that was a failure, I'm never going to do that again. Walk away saying, I failed because I understand the why. And now what can I learn from it so that the next time I'm in this position, and yes, and especially if you embrace failure in a way where you're not afraid to learn from it, yeah, I think people will give you a chance to be back in there, but make sure it's a learning experience. Don't let it just be a burning experience. Don't let it just be something that burns you. Go back and learn from it.
You know, it's funny. Think about how Jodie got that question, and Jodie's first response to the question was to pause, and then she said, "Thank you for the question." So when I look at Jodie, you're looking at a person who's very mature and very aware, right? I think that people that are at her level, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a CEO, they could be in all kinds of levels of life, but with that kind of mental, emotional situation awareness, those people tend to be very much into redemption and reconciliation and forgiveness. And I will tell, those like Cece asked the question, Cece, I've spent a lot of my life doing prison ministry, and I've met with a lot of people who are incarcerated, done some bad things, and I've seen some beautiful things come out of that. Earlier this year, I was at a Coleman Federal Prison meeting with a former U.S. member of Congress who was incarcerated. And their story's not done yet, and they're out of prison now, and I think they're going to go on to do great things. And so I think with people who really have experienced life, absolutely they do. I think to Jodie's point, one of the big things is to tell the truth, and to be open about it. In our society, I'm sure all of you have seen this, somebody posts something on social media that's factually inaccurate, and if someone comments and proves that they're wrong, it almost never does somebody say, oh wow, you're right, I was wrong, I made a mistake, right? It's very rare. But when people do that, it actually makes them more powerful, you know? Like if you're on one side of a political aisle and you're debating against another person outside the political aisle, and they make a good point, and you're like, wow, that's a really good point, I agree with you. Like, it empowers you, it doesn't make you look less, right? So yeah, I think that you're on the right path of stepping into that. So keep going, listen to Jodie, you're gonna be okay. Any other questions?
Awesome. We got one last question. So what's something that you do every day or once in a while that makes you a successful businesswoman?
What I do every day, I think, I don't know if this makes me a successful businesswoman, but it certainly brings peace to me. Is that I continue to be an early riser, and I try to take that time to really be thoughtful. Sometimes whatever it is that I need to be thoughtful about. Um, Usually it might be a big problem coming up. It might be just readings that I need to do. But I try to start every morning there. I also try to journal. I write a lot. And to Cece's question earlier, I like to write about my own failures so that I learn from them. I think if you're not, whether you're at my level or Cece, you're sitting right where you are, I think if you're not failing a little bit every day, you're not growing. But if you're just failing a little bit every day and you're just like, oh, well, that didn't work out, I think I'll try something else, I think that's equally as bad. You really need to understand why. And I'm going to go back to tennis. You know, you need to take a second when you lose a point and go, okay, why? All right, got it, adjust, and back in there. So I try to do that. And the other thing I would say that I really work on, and I think this is important for everybody, is I really try to be present wherever I am. So if I have something that needs to be addressed at home, and we have 4 kids, and there's routinely something that needs to be addressed at home, and we have aging parents. We've gone through the stage of aging parents, and I try to be present and to address that so that when I'm in the office, I'm very present in the office. And I think those of us who try to live in 2 or 3 worlds all at the same time, that is difficult. That's really, that I think is really difficult. But I think if you can learn how to be present, and so that's why I need these moments, this time in the morning to really be contemplative. And then the final thing I would say is networks. Nobody's successful on their own. The most important thing you can do in life, is pick your partners wisely. That's where I would start. Pick your partners at home wisely. Pick your partners at work wisely. Go to a place to work that matches your own values. Pick your partners wisely. Pick your friends wisely, and then network, because nobody will be successful by themselves. So when I sit here and I think about, you ask me what I do every day to be a successful business person. And as I work through that, there's certain routines and habits I have, but I really think it comes down to the people you choose to surround yourself with.
Awesome.
I'm going to go ahead and move to like wrapping up. Is that okay, Alec? I have a thumbs up from you. Is that all right? Jodie, I just thought all those comments were great. You know, one thing's about being an early riser. If you ever have you're not feeling well and you sleep in, you still wake up before everybody else, right? So that's good stuff. And that journaling, wow, you know, like, and just like letting it flow out. And, you know, I always like to use the expression, feel your feelings and speak your truth, like feeling stuff. If you think about joy being 10 and sorrow being 1, a lot of people want to live their whole life at 5. And the reality is, if you want to have great joy, you have to allow yourself to feel great sorrow, right? So it's like I always tell people, go to weddings, go to funerals, and cry at both of them, right? But allow yourself to be present and feel it. And that present comment, oh my gosh, Jodie, that is the theme of my 2020 has been trying to be present. It's like you're in my head. You're just really great. That's really great wisdom. So, you know, Jodie, what I typically would ask you is like, are you hiring? Seems hiring. I guess let me ask that real quick. Can you just sort of quick answer, yes or no? Are you guys hiring? Oh, you're on mute. There you go. There you go. Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
We are hiring in very selective roles. We are not hiring right now. like we normally would, but we do have 3 or 4 open positions today at Eames. So yes.
Gotcha.
One is in Florida too. They're going to reach
Gotcha.
out to you, John.
I think I'm on a phone call about that. Who
That's
knows?
awesome.
Maybe
That's
I'll apply.
awesome.
I got no
Might be
job.
somebody on the phone right now.
Yeah, hey, right now. All right, so what I typically would ask you, Jody, what I would want to say is that, hey, you know, you're a mom and you got kids in the age group of 21, what advice you would have for them? I kind of feel like you've already answered that, right? Unless you want to add something. So here's the question instead I want to ask. For all of us, myself, the FSU people, the faculty, the professors, and all these students that are here, what can we do to help you? What can we do to be serving you in Edens?
That is a great question. First, I could send you, if anybody's down in Miami, most of our Florida portfolio is in Miami. We'd love for you to be a part of our community. But I really think right now, and second, I would say support your local retailers. But also think about your own rules of engagement in your own community. And I would ask you to do that because I think what helps Edens, what helps Crossman, what helps all of us is really true, thoughtful citizenship in this country. And it's different for everybody, and I respect that. But there are certain things that we can be united. And at Edens, that's really what we're trying to do. We're really about trying to build these strong communities and inspire people to really engage within them. We have 4 CPIs that we measure. We measure our own employee engagement. We measure our retailers' sales impact. We measure our total shareholder return, our NOI, but we also measure our community stats and around every one of our centers in the shape of crime, education, health, and opportunity, and then our sustainability. And the reason we do that is because prosperity comes when people connect with one another, when people engage as a part of their community. And we measure that economically, we measure it socially. That's how, and as a country, we will all be more prosperous when we truly engage in our communities in a way that inspires this engagement. And it doesn't have to look alike. It's okay to have different thoughts and ideas. How do we civilly engage with one another? I think that's the greatest gift we can give each other, but we can give any business. It's where we will all prosper together.
Dude, Jody's awesome. Like, guys, like what you just heard, that is like the definition of legacy. You know, somebody, you know, I'm asking her how we can help her, and she's telling us how we can help our own communities. That's powerful stuff. I will say, students, seriously, go look at her article. It's we need our communities now more than ever. She posted that on LinkedIn. Every single one of you could look that up and read it. And I'm sure you can make a comment, give some feedback on that. But you know, let's as Seminoles, let's be fans of Edens and Jody, right? Because she's given her time and her wisdom to us today, and let's give that respect back. So, Jody, thanks so much. Thank you so much for the time together. I look forward to talking to your team tomorrow, and please see me and all of us as a fan, as a resource to anything we can do to help you and as you keep going and doing things in your career. Okay?
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Alec. Thank you for facilitating this. Great to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you as well.
All right. Bye.
Good job, Alec. Go Noles. Go Noles.
All right, everybody. Thank you for a great discussion, for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. To our audience, please plan to join us Thursday, October 22nd at 12 noon for our next If I Were 21 discussion. That discussion will feature Mary Legend, Head of Global Research for Heitman, headquartered in Chicago. You're not going to want to miss that. You all have a great day. Thank you so much.